What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined by Jimmy Watkins, columnist, cleveland.com, in the building. Jimmy, how are you doing, my friend?
We're busy, man. It's football season, times two for in college. I'm on the road this weekend from Michigan, Texas. I'm going to Browns every day. You see the different background. I'm dog sitting for mama. And we're talking hoops. Sports are back. Summer wasteland is over. Let's go.
Man. I just got back from vacation. I am reeling, Jimmy. I am trying to get back in the flow, a little bit under the weather. Got a little bit sunburnt while I was in the Bahamas, dude. Trying to figure out my way back into this Cleveland weather situation. It's a lot going on. I'm trying to figure out if this is even going to be an audio-only podcast, if I deem myself too goofy to look at for 30 minutes. But, Jimmy, I do know this is a Cavs podcast, obviously, but I wanted to get your insight. Football season, as you mentioned, is around the corner, starting up on Sunday. You have the home opener for the Browns. Do you have a prediction for us on this podcast?
For Sunday? Is that what we're saying?
Yep.
I expect few points. I'll start there because the Browns offense, I just don't think got a lot out of training camp. They were prioritizing rest and getting guys back from injury, and as a result, this offense hasn't had a ton of reps with its first team. So I expect a few points. I expect an ugly game on Sunday, which honestly might, and the Cowboys are in a similar boat. If you're hearing that jingling, that's our friend Nala, who wants to be pet right now. The Cowboys, Dak and CD have had contract disputes, and CD missed a lot of camp. Practice time with his contract dispute. I think both sides will probably look a little rusty on offense. Both sides are very talented on defense. I guess that kind of favors the Browns, right? Because they're at home and the defense plays. It's one of the best defenses of all time statistically last year at home games. Give me the Browns like 17-14, like real ugly. We're not going to have a ton. There won't be any inspired Deshaun Watson columns coming out of this game, but that's not the end of the world. This is a long process there. I think the defense is going to rule the day on both sides, but I'll take the Browns by like 3.
Taking the Brownies over America's team in the first game of the season. I like it a lot. But, all right, Jimmy, we talked about this a little bit off the pod. Are you in a fantasy football league this year? I'm in one for the first time in like 3, 4, 5 years. What are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you feeling about your team if you are in a league? I'm
in too many leagues. So we'll see how the year goes. I did win my, the league that I've been in the longest last year. So I currently have a trophy in my living room that depicts the face of a former Athens, Ohio landlord on it. That's our trophy.
Roll Bobbies, baby. Roll Bobbies. But now back to what you guys are all here for. Cavs reporting. Cavs talk. The White and Gold Talk podcast, baby. We're back. And Jimmy, while I was gone, a couple of news items hit the fan. Obviously, the Cavs have now used up all of their two-way player options, with Luke Travers being the last one to sign that deal. Also, JT Thor and Amani Bates. Those are the 3 guys that the Cavs are going to have as a two-way option, meaning that they're either going to be able to get opportunities in the G League with the Cleveland Charge, or they're going to be up in the big leagues with the Cavs. What do you think about adding Luke Travers after the summer league that some may say wasn't as inspiring as many might have wanted for a two-way guy on this team? Coming from Australia, coming from the NBL, what do you think about Luke Travers coming into this next season?
Big picture Cavs look at this inconsequential. Like, I guess if you zoom out far enough, it could mean something down the road. But we're talking about winning a championship in the immediate future. Two-ways aren't the guys that help you do that. These are kind of the connectors, I would say, of like the dog days of a season, right? You're looking at these guys to play spot minutes when injuries hit your roster, or if you're resting a bunch of guys, you want to get a look at a guy like Luke Travers, who has not seen a ton of NBA reps. It's not. This is mostly just news about a former draft and stash that's a little less stashed now. My opinion on Luke Travers as a basketball player is still mostly like I like his size, but we'd love to see the jump shot come around.
As we're recording this, it is apparently Luke Travers' birthday. I'm pulling up his basketball reference, trying to get into his international stats a little bit, Jimmy. And I find out that he was born on September 3rd. And this podcast will be released today because we want to do a Tuesday, Thursday release right now as the information is kind of winding down and we're getting towards training camp and all those things. Speaking of training camp, Jimmy, the Cavs announced that they're going to Orlando, or Florida. I don't know if IMG Academy is actually in Orlando, but they're going to IMG Academy for training camp. It's going to be an interesting situation because we know that IMG Academy has one of the better facilities for a high school prep organization, but I haven't been to a training camp before when I've covered MLB, NBA, all these other sports, and I haven't been to a training camp before. I'm hoping I get to go down there and just experience everything that comes with the earlier on. And then also Media Day coming up, and I have expressed my very much excitement for Media Day because I, again, haven't done that yet because I came in 3 games into the season last year. So now it's kind of showing face and being like, hey, I wasn't just a one-trick pony. I'll be back a couple times. But, I mean, I think all of this to say, Luke Travers is going to be on this roster. He's going to be in training camp, going to be able to experience. And we talked to him during Summer League, and he mentioned explicitly that he wanted to get to the NBA ASAP. We know that he was in a mutual agreement to part ways with Melbourne United, which was his team in Australia. Now he's with the Cavs. So let's look at some of his numbers from last year. So with Melbourne United, he played 25 games. He averaged 26.3 minutes per game. He averaged 51.6 field goal percentage, 32.7 3-point percentage, and he averaged 12 points a game along with 7.6 rebounds per game, which is good for somebody that is playing overseas, and we all understand the competitiveness of those games, those series, all that different stuff. But during Summer League, we were having the conversation of players that have gotten the grooming of an NBA system, players that have gotten the opportunity to solely focus on something that they know. And for me, the three-point shot for Luke Travers at 6'6", as a guard, as somebody that wants to handle the ball, that potentially might get slid into the small forward position, needs to be more efficient, right? We look at that 31 or 32.7. I want that to be a little bit higher for Luke. I want him to be more efficient, more just better with the opportunities that is being given, especially in the G League. I feel like this is going to be a great opportunity for him to not only grow in himself and know that he's in this market, he's being in an NBA system, but now you get opportunities to work with some of the best in the game, especially even in the G League. We saw Imani Bates grow last year. We saw Craig Porter Jr. be able to showcase his abilities a couple of times down there. But throughout the entire history of the G League, there have been players that have gone from being not known and, as Jimmy mentioned earlier, stashed away, to coming into the G League, showing themselves, and then earning a spot. Even if it wasn't with the team that they were originally on, they were able to show themselves and get some opportunities in the NBA system. And I think that could be a factor for Luke Travers, depending on how he grows in this system, what he's able to gain from being in an NBA weight room, all those different things. But, Jimmy, the next thing on our docket today is the 2 remaining roster spots that are open for the Cavs because Isaac Okoro still has not signed his qualifying offer. The $11.8 million that has been given to him since earlier this season. Even when Imani Bates got his, it was around the same time. Jimmy, what is your sense of what this means for Isaac to be, quote-unquote, still shopping the market this late into the off-season, training camp, like we mentioned, around the corner, and him still not on the deal that's been on the table for what seems like forever now.
What are your options at this point, right? Like we're going into training camp. Teams are solidifying their roster. Like you can basically, like how many teams even have cap space right now? I don't have Spotrac. I don't know. I never know how to say it. I know how it's spelled. I don't have it handy right now, but most of the league has spent most of its money. And if there were teams who had interest in Isaac Okoro, I feel like that interest would have manifested by now. I mean, maybe we've talked about a team like the Pistons who made a late-ish hire in the coaching cycle with JB Bickerstaff, who obviously has a ton of experience coaching Isaac and is defensive focused and all those good boxes that an Isaac Okoro team would check. But like, I feel like we're kind of just waiting for Isaac to take the qualifying offer at this point. Which, I mean, I guess it could go either way. If he has a better shooting postseason, like I don't really. Again, we've established on this podcast that I don't really care what Isaac Okoro's 3-point percentage is during the regular season, particularly as often as he is left open. But you can, and I don't want to say trick somebody, but you can trick somebody with a playoff run. Like if let's assume he comes back on the qualifying offer, the regular season 3-point percentage is, even if it's not hovering around 39% like it was last year, it's better than his career average. And then he just gets hot for a couple weeks in the playoffs. Like we have seen lesser defenders, lesser toolsy players than Isaac Okoro get bigger paydays off of one playoff run where they shot the ball better than they typically did. So it's kind of what it's always been. It sounds like he's going to need to bet on himself, and that puts him in a pretty interesting mental position heading into next season because we've talked a lot about with the jump shooting guys who have the ups and downs. It's a lot about confidence, and you can really shoot yourself into or out of a groove. And when it's a lot of pressure it's a lot of pressure in general to be the guy that teams leave open to go, oh, he's with us. He can't shoot, whatever, right? That's a lot of spotlight on you in the first place. Now you're like, no exaggeration, especially when we get to the playoffs, those moments are like determining your future earnings in a big way. Like the difference between 4 out of 10 threes in over a 2-3 game playoff span and 3 out of 10 threes could be like $10 million a year, which, I mean, that's an oversimplification, but seriously, you see guys get paid off of playoff. This happens to, I mean, Max Strus kind of did this for himself in Miami, and his shooting has more staying power, and I think he's really proven himself as a rotation guy, as a two-way rotation guy in the league. But like, Isaac Okoro has the opportunity to make, I mean, especially in a new cap environment, that at least that kind of money if he shoots his way into a different conversation as a 3-and-D guy. So but he also has the like, if he comes back, let's say he comes back next year and it looks similar, where like the regular season numbers don't tell the whole story, and he's clanging open 3-pointers in the playoffs, and maybe that hurts his minutes in the playoffs. Like, you might just, you're in a different kind of conversation. You're a defensive specialist instead of a 3-and-D guy. You might be, I think if we used like the mid-level exception as like a line of demarcation for a guy like Isaac Okoro, he's young enough where teams will still bet on him. But like, if the jumper isn't real, your earning potential is just limited. And as good as he is defensively, and as he's a great finisher in transition, all that sort of stuff, great teammate, great locker room guy, the jumper will, same thing with Luke Travers, the jumper will determine what he is or isn't.
And it's not uncommon for like a situation like this to play a player like Isaac out of the league. Like, you're a top 5 guy that was drafted, right? You're supposed to be someone that is supposed to come in and make an immediate impact, right? But also in Cleveland, it was a weird situation where he was brought in and kind of thrown into the fire. Like, oh, we're still rebuilding. You'll have time to figure this out. And then a year or two later, that entirely changes. because Donovan Mitchell joins the team. And effectively, the team goes from, oh, we're rebuilding to, hey, we need you to start making these buckets in the playoffs or you're not going to be here very long. And that's just the cruel reality of the NBA and how things can swing in a matter of moments, in a matter of seasons, right? But Isaac is like also, you talk about the mental aspect of it. He's going to be going up against players on his own team if he ends up taking the Cavs qualifying offer, which at this point I think is just the reality of his situation, is that like you're going up against your replacements, basically, and Jalen Tyson and Amani Bates and guys that who, if they can build their defensive game to not your level, but close to it, like people are going to respect them more because they have a reliable offensive game, quote unquote. I'm not saying that rookie Jalen Tyson is going to come in and steal the spotlight or whatever, like Craig Porter Jr. kind of did last year, but there's an expectation that because he had a little bit more seasoning, because he has the opportunity to play multiple different positions, point guard through small forward, you can play him. He's a little bit taller. He has a little bit more grit to him, a little bit more strength to him, and he understands that his weakness is defense. He came in saying that and saying that he wanted to still be on the all-defensive team, right? Doesn't matter whichever one he wanted. He wants to come in as a rookie and prove that his weakness is going to turn into his strength. And I think that's a mindset that a lot of people came into. I still think Isaac Okoro is hungry, right? There have been videos circulating on the internet. As you guys know, I'm always looking at all of those things. And he's worked out with Donovan Mitchell this summer, right? And Donovan's probably talking to him about the situation as well. And trying to help him figure out what is going on, what the best play is, all these different things. But you also know that you are like, your contract is going to end this season whether you take it or not, right? If he takes this qualifying offer, he becomes an unrestricted free agent. Same thing kind of situation with Caris LeVert. Your contract is going to come to a close really quickly, and your contract looks really tradable, especially when we have these young guys that come up that can do the same things that you can at a lower price, because we understand Caris LeVert has some market in this league. Caris LeVert has some likability from coaches around the league that want him to come play for them or whatever. But in this situation, it's what can you get more for your bang for your buck in the situation for the Cavs when they're trying to figure out the first apron, second apron, luxury tax, all these different things that with the new CBA are affecting them and will affect them for the next couple of years with all these maximum contracts they've been giving out, especially this off season. So Jimmy, when it comes to Isaac, when it comes to Luke, who we mentioned is 23 years old today, happy birthday. Like, who do you feel like is the best replacement on the current roster for the Cavs for Isaac Okoro? Because I think we've kind of said before that Jalen Tyson is like Caris LeVert's replacement. Do you think there is a replacement for Isaac Okoro if he ends up getting traded or something this offseason, or if he comes back and plays for one more year and doesn't have the year that he needs to get an extended contract?
Couple things on birthdays. First, today is also my mother's birthday, so shout out to moms. And fellow cleveland.com employee Andrew Gillis, who covers Ohio State for us, has the same birthday as my mom, I know, because we all went to college together. So happy birthdays to everyone. The other thing is, Isaac Okoro is also 23 years old. Like, we everything about Luke Travers is we have to project and envision, and we're having the conversations that we're having about Isaac's jump shot right now. I think the Cavs would love to be having those about Luke Travers' jump shot right now. Like, Luke Travers is shooting like I had to take down my basketball reference page because our recording software doesn't like when I have multiple tabs open and it freezes me out of the studio. But like, the attempt numbers are really still really low for Luke Travers, and that's on limited minutes in a different league, in a different environment. But like Isaac Okoro, for as much as we still want to see from him on the offensive end, he's much further ahead than Luke Travers. So in any of these cases, honestly, like I guess I would say my answer to your original question is Jalen Tyson, just because the Cavs invested a higher draft pick in him than the other two, and he seems to be a little bit more ready than the other two to play NBA minutes. Doesn't mean I think he's going to be ready soon. Like, I don't expect to see much of Jalen Tyson at all this year, in terms of consistent minutes, legitimate minutes, unless injuries happen. So, I mean, it's as much about, I'm glad you mentioned trades. I think it's as much about guarding against, like, Isaac Okoro needs to convince the Cavs that they don't need to add another 3-and-D type player, a player of his ilk that plays a similar role position as him. When we're talking about the Donovan Darius fit or the Jared Allen Evan Mobley fit, if we're talking about moving one of the core four, we're probably talking about getting an Isaac Okoro-ish player archetype back, right? Like, we're talking about somebody between 6'5" and 6'8" who defends well and shoots a good amount of threes and hits a decent number of those a decent percentage on those threes. I don't know, let's take a guy like Trey Murphy from the Pelicans, who the Pelicans are really high on, but they also have like a kind of a log jam at that wings. They got him, they got Herb Jones, they got Brandon Ingram, multi-positional guys. Like, if we're like Darius Garland for one of those guys and some picks, if that's the move, I kind of like it. Yeah, so Isaac Okoro is guarding against that too. He's not just trying to hold off these young guys, though the Cavs are smart to replenish their cupboard of young wings. Like, everyone, if you have an extra asset or roster spot in today's NBA, unless you just love a long shot bet out there, you're pretty well served just picking straws out of this guy's 6'6" kind of lengthy and can move his feet. Maybe we can teach him how to shoot. Or this guy's 6'6" and can shoot. Maybe we can teach him how to be a decent team defender. Picking out of that box. That's the other thing about a guy like Isaac Okoro. Reality is, in today's NBA, we are simply more forgiving of a player who is offense first. Like, if you are an Isaac Okoro level shooter, like if you are on offense, what Isaac Okoro is on defense, you're going to play 10 years in the league. That's just what it is. If you could shoot like that, even if you're like, think of a guy like Steve Novak from the Knicks, who like barely played on most of the teams he was on. He was around for a while. If you're a guy like Isaac Okoro, who, by the way, is taking tangible steps. Like, I know I said I don't care about the regular season numbers, but it's better to have the regular season bumps than not. And he is taking steps in the right direction there. Like, if he had never, I think he came in shooting like low 30s or something on low attempt volume. Like, even as good as he is on defense, like, if you start to lose a step athletically, the slope is real slippery for players that can't shoot or impact a game offensively. And we're just like, there's always going to be a room at the end of a roster for a guy who can come in and, be a 3-point specialist if you're down by 3 with 3.5 seconds left. There's less room for, like, how many Tony Allens are in the league right now? That's kind of a player from a bygone era. Those guys are just not, they don't last as long, and they don't have this, teams just don't have the same patience with them. Like, if you can't shoot, it's a real quick hook for you in a playoff series, and as a result, it can be a quick hook for you, in your future.
And Jimmy, we talk about Isaac Okoro's defense, right? And that is his end all be all. That is his, he is one of the best in the league perimeter defenders when it comes to guarding 1 through 3, right? I don't want to start giving him 4 and 5 because then it gets tricky, right? We saw what happened in the Orlando series with Paolo Banchero. That's a tall task to ask of him anyway. But who do the Cavs have to replace him on defense? And if you want to tell me, and I've had this conversation with Chris before, if you want to tell me that it's Karis LeVert, and I see that, right? But isn't he also going to be gone soon too, predictively? Like, isn't that what we've been thinking because of the contract situation, because of his likability around the league? So if you're getting rid of Isaac Okoro and Karis LeVert, you're telling me that the best perimeter defender then on your roster when it comes to the guards is probably Donovan Mitchell. Maybe. Like
I would say Strus.
that's a
I would say
you
Strus
could say Strus.
because of the size,
Yes. Yeah.
but with the quickness, either way, you have a hole to pick at there.
Right, but technically Strus is a 3 right now. even though I don't want to call him a 3, he's a 3 on this roster. So I mean, like if you talk about just guards for on the roster of the Cavs, it's not Darius. And because like what the conversation then becomes is Darius is being asked to step his game up offensively, right? And I'm still, like I've been telling you, in the videos that I've been watching that have been posted this summer, he looks like he is working tirelessly on the offensive end of the ball. Defensively, it don't look like he's taking that big of a step. There's been different clips of him working out with Bronny James, him being working out with Jordan Clarkson, him in runs against KD and some other guys like that. He does this stuff on offense, but then when it comes to the defensive end, it's like, are you tired? Do you know you're going to be giving more time to the offensive end, so you're not really worried as much about that? What is that conversation then? And then you talk about Donovan Mitchell, who, as we saw in different lineups last season, when you put him next to Isaac, Dean Wade, a version of Evan Mobley or Jared Allen, depending on what lineup you want to go, maybe you put them all together, right? And Donovan is able to use his IQ to run into the passing lanes and use his hands, use his wingspan and stuff like that. But when it comes to one-on-one, when it comes to staying in front of your man on an island, I don't really think Donovan Mitchell is going to be that defensive stopper, right? And that's no slight to Donovan Mitchell. It's just the era of offense and how this league is being run. So you need somebody who is going to be able to play defense at a high level at the point of attack. Dean Wade does it for the forwards and for the centers and stuff like that. Isaac Okoro does it for the guards. Max Strus did it against guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in the Boston Celtics series. What are you going to do if Karis LeVert and Isaac Okoro no longer there because you consider those two to be the best perimeter defenders on this team? I think it's going to be really weird to think about this as going from this is a top 5 defense in the last 2 seasons to they might score 140 like the Pacers did, but are they going to be able to stop people on defense if they're outside of the perimeter, right? Because we understand Evan Mobley and Jared Allen go do the stuff at the rim. They're going to be able to do those things. Evan Mobley can slide out to the perimeter and help out on bigger defenders. But how much is that going to impact them on both sides of the ball? What's your take on that, Jimmy, and how that's going to come to fruition this next season?
I think we're kind of this now. We're circling the point as we talk about, what happens with Karis, what happens with Isaac long term. What we're talking about is, again, as much as the Cavs are keeping it together and running it back and betting on continuity and betting on Kenny Atkinson to make the existing parts work better than they did before, this era of Cavs basketball, then this roster, as it's currently constructed, is approaching a head, like a fork in the road. This is a salary cap reality where Donovan Mitchell's on a max deal. Darius Garland is on, he signed a max deal at the time of his rookie extension. Evan Mobley just signed a rookie extension. Jared Allen, I think the Jared Allen extension is fine. He's paid like the 10th best center. He's 10th best center in the league. Like that's where his salary ranks in the position last I checked, at least. And if you look at the list, he's probably like the 10th best center. But like those 4 add up. So we're gonna come to a situation pretty quickly here where the Cavs are going to be floating with the second apron, which is extremely punitive. I don't want to do too much cap minutia on the pod, but basically, if you hit a certain threshold over the luxury tax, it gets real hard to build out your team. Like you have to match exact salaries and trades. Your ability to use your mid-level exception gets limited. I'm freestyling some of this stuff, but like if you do it for a couple of years, your first round pick 5 years out automatically gets moved to the end of the first round. Like the second apron is a place where if your team costs that much money, you better be sure that it's ready to win a championship now, or at least contend for one, whatever that means to you now, or we're going to start moving pieces around. So there's just, we could talk, Isaac Okoro plays a crucial role on the Cavs as currently constructed. You'd like to have an elite perimeter defender to guard your jitterbug guards who, your Jalen Brunsons who dribble a lot and are pick and roll operators. Isaac is unique in that he can guard those guys and guard, your normal sized wings. I think we probably hit the line at a guy like Paolo Banchero, who's giant and can do everything. Although Isaac, performed admirably at times in the Magic series. It's just that, Paolo was taller than him and can shoot over him sometimes. So there's just this is a big year for a lot of people. It's magnified for Isaac because he's going to be in the last year of his deal. And the Cavs are going to have to, we're in kind of the same position now as we were last year, just kind of more so. The Cavs doubled down on, we think this core four is good enough to get us to where we want to go. And I don't think that's unfounded. I also think that those decisions, as we have previously discussed, are influenced by the fact that, they didn't like the trade market when they did. I promise they did sniff the trade market for both Jared Allen and Darius Garland. They won't say that publicly, but I promise they did. So it's kind of just like they're doubling down. Now the pressure's even more magnified because they're getting closer to this financial threshold that makes life very hard on a team. And if you reach the second apron and you're not ready to win, it's hard to climb out of that. It's hard to be a team that is a second round team. You're stuck in the second apron because your flexibility, your ability to improve your roster is thrashed by the salary cap rules. So we're having a small conversation about Isaac Okoro and maybe Karis LeVert and who could fill these roles going forward. By the way, this makes the Jalen Tyson. I wrote this at the time. I think I wrote it before they picked Jalen Tyson. This might be the best Cavs draft pick in terms of positioning that they have for the next 5 years. Certainly the Cavs would like that to be the case because they'd like to be picking at the end of the 20s. So that Jalen Tyson pick is very important over the next 5 years. They really need him to be something. But the Cavs are in a position where there are 7 guys on the team. 7, and you can think of them, the 7 most important guys on the team are kind of all in that situation. They need Evan Mobley to take a huge step forward. They need Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to prove they can coexist together at a high level in the playoffs. They need Darius Garland to have a bounce back season. They need Donovan Mitchell to have a playoff run that says, you put anyone around me and we're going to the Eastern Conference Finals. You need him to be that level star. He's top 20 now. It'd be sweet if he was top 10. You know what I mean? So we're having a small picture conversation about the Cavs, but it's hard to have these conversations about minutia without talking about their existential reality, which is just that, a lot of things better start happening for a lot of people in this organization.
Yeah, Jimmy, I cannot count on one hand, maybe not even 2 hands, how many times I've said that on this podcast, man. This is the season for everybody on the Cavs to kind of show themselves because, like you said, and you said it really, really well, there's an entire roster of players that have to prove themselves in one, maybe more than one areas of this game, right? And I think that's really important to touch on. But here is the biggest question for you and I on this podcast today, Jimmy. Donovan Mitchell signed with the Cavs or agreed to sign with the Cavs 2 years ago, 2 days ago, right? He posted it on Twitter on September 1st and did his little thing that he always does before the game when it tells you that he's going to play, when he says hashtag let him know, right? So he's back for another season, just signed an extension, potentially is going to sign another extension after he accrues 10 years of NBA service to be a lifelong Cavalier afterwards. 2 years in, Jimmy, do you think that the Cavs trading for Donovan Mitchell, winning 99 games over the next 2 seasons, is a success, or do you think it has brought too much distraction or something else to the entire team that has made this more difficult on the organization? What is your take? And I'll get into mine after.
There's two ways to look at this. The first way is that the moment you traded for Donovan Mitchell, it was a success because the Cavs, look at what the alternative was. The Cavs were building something for sure. They made the play-in tournament during the year before they acquired Donovan Mitchell, and they were on a 50-win pace for a lot of that season before injuries hit them. I want to say in that February-March window that kind of slowed them down during that, was that 2021-22 season? I think that's what it was, yeah, because Don's first year was 22-23. And now they're a top 4 playoff seed or thereabouts for 2 years in a row. They literally top 4 playoff seed 2 years in a row, and they made the conference semifinals. They're still a ways away from the peak, but look at where you started. Look at where you are. This is what Kobe Altman often says when we talk about big picture conversations with the Cavs. He'll go even further back. Look at the John Beilein years. Look at where they were before they drafted and traded for Jarrett. You know, it was some dark times in the post LeBron years. Now they've won 99 games in 2 years. The Cavs are a development success story, particularly for a small market team. And I will reiterate again to say that getting Donovan Mitchell to sign an extension after this trade, this summer's extension I'm talking about, the extension that will take him to 10 years of service, is a massive victory for the Cavs and smart market franchises at large. It proves the validity in taking a risk like that and trading for Donovan Mitchell, even though you're not on his quote unquote list of destinations. It proves that it's worth it. It gives you another chance. They haven't won anything with Donovan Mitchell. They have not even reached the heights that Donovan reached with the Utah Jazz, and Donovan wanted to get out of there in part because the Jazz were pivoting in a different direction. But you haven't even reached Donovan's initial threshold of his career yet. But you have more bites at the apple. So by those standards, unmitigated success, and anyone who says otherwise is kind of smoking something. Now, by the expectations you create by trading for Donovan Mitchell, I think one playoff series win in 2 years feels a little underwhelming. The Cavs were decisive favorites over the Knicks 2 years ago. We do not have to rehash that bully ball series, but that is a fact. They had more talent, and they had home court advantage, and they got smoked. Huge failure. The Orlando series, really close to a huge failure. We've talked a lot about how that winning that series does represent growth for this franchise. And by the way, the mental wherewithal to rebound from an 18-point halftime deficit in Game 7, where the fans were booing you off the court at the end of the first half buzzer, that's impressive too. But man, you were close to hitting the detonation button. I don't think Donovan Mitchell signs the extension if you lose that series to Orlando. And what did you do after that? You had one impressive playoff road win in Boston, but then the Celtics kind of, I don't even want to say they woke up. They continued playing with their food. They just also finished. They finished the meal and won in 5 games. So that we all know that's not good enough going forward. And I think if you would have told Cavs fans when they made the trade for Donovan 2 years ago, hey, you're only going to win one playoff series over the next 2 years, that's pretty disappointing. So my answer is kind of both. But I think we really should focus. It's a win. You've got Donovan Mitchell, and you got him to stay. That's a win. Now you need to tangibly win, which is, again, we can talk. We've been talking in circles. We need the season to start. We need media day. We need new talking points because the Cavs have run it back. We know what the roster is. We know what the stakes are. So now you just need to go win.
I'm partially in agreement with you, Jimmy, and I want to say this, right? Because the last 2 years have been a success for the Cavs. Unfortunately, it has been a success based on adding Donovan Mitchell, trying to figure things out with the current roster, kind of shuffling things around over the last 2 years. but also understanding that you mentioned something earlier that kind of got my eye or caught my ear was that Donovan Mitchell is trying to show that you can put whoever around me and I'm going to still be able to help this team get to where we want to go, where I want to go, right? And that reminded me a lot of LeBron James, right? Because we understand the players that he had around him that he was able to lift up and pull to Eastern Conference Finals, NBA Finals, positions that they, with the roster that they have, shouldn't have been in, right? This is a better roster than the players that LeBron James had around him, right? And I think that overall,
I mean,
Donovan
better
Mitchell
than the one he had at the end. Better than the one he had
at
at the end.
right,
In
right.
2018 during the first window, if we're talking like LeBron and
That's what
before he
I'm
goes to the
mentioning.
Heat,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely better. Definitely better.
It's when he had Ilgauskas and all of them, right? Like, and you're talking about like not the 2016 roster. We can compare the two, but I'm not willing to put this roster above them just yet. But I do think that if the Cavs cannot win, because Donovan has 3 seasons until his player option, if they can't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals by then I think it will be a failure. And the comparison that I was making between LeBron James and this team is that there were creations of super teams and tandems and big threes that were made in part to try and slow LeBron James and his teams down, right? Now you have the Knicks, who are already doing that kind of sort of thing. Now they have the Vandy boys, right? Now you have Philly, who have a big three of that over there, Joel, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. Now you have still Milwaukee, who's trying to add on and create their own little thing with Dame and Giannis Antetokounmpo. There are teams that are around the league. Obviously, Boston Celtics, right? I feel like we don't even have to mention them. They're already at the top of the league at the moment. There are teams that are continually building around the Cavs that are trying to get better because I think they have a vantage point that this Cavs team could do it if it would have been the same roster that they had last year against the same rosters around the Eastern Conference, right? Now it's going to be a lot harder. Now there are people saying that the Cavs are fifth in the East, sixth in the East if you want to throw in Orlando or Indiana are better than them with the chemistry or whatever. But that's what makes it difficult. The first 2 years were a trial period, right? You get a free trial for the first 2 years. You get them to sign an extra contract, an extension. Now you got these next 3 years before the player option season. Do you make it to where Donovan Mitchell has been saying that he wants to go? That when Chris was talking to him, he said, I want to show that I'm a playoff player, Eastern Conference Finals, NBA Finals. Will you reach that goal? And if you don't, I think it's hard to see if he's going to be back for a player option or if he'll be willing to say that the Cavs organization is a team that is going to be able to get him over that hump because he still hasn't gotten past that second round. And that's where he needs to be where he wants to be in his career. So, Jimmy, I'm with you. I'm split. Right now, yes, it is a success. But it can very quickly turn into something that is not, depending on how this next season goes. Because as we said, it is going to be a big year for a lot of different people. But it is also going to be a year where if people don't play to their standard or their level, they could be moved and brought in new players that could either bolster this lineup in rotation or in this roster, or it could be another horizontal move, or it could even be a decline. So this season is big. I know we've said it before that this, like last year, was because they wanted to get Donovan Mitchell to make this extension. This next season is it because you have players like Jared Allen and Darius Garland who could potentially be on the trading block depending on if the tandem between Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell doesn't work, if the tandem of Evan Mobley and Jared Allen doesn't work. How does that change your roster? How does that change your outlook? Do you move Evan Mobley to the 5? All those different things. Do you get a real shooting guard? all those things, right? I just think that this is the comparison to how LeBron uplifted his team and how Donovan Mitchell can uplift his team, and he's shown that he can, but to what extent? To what level? Where are you going to be able to take this team? So, Jimmy, I don't know if you have a rebuttal to that or anything, or if you're ready to just wrap this pod up on those notes.
I would say I like your comparison about LeBron, the early stages of LeBron. And in fact, I'm kind of writing about that. We're doing our cleveland.com top 40 most influential list. I think we're starting to release those in like a week or so. We'll see. I'm still plotting out the exact start date for those, but Donovan's in the top 10, and I'm writing a column about how Donovan rekindles the the basketball energy of early days LeBron in Cleveland, right? And I think we kind of forget almost what that was like because LeBron, the second act of LeBron was so cool and everyone was so invested in the Cavs Warriors rivalry, and the 3-1 comeback culminating in the block by James is the defining 2 weeks of LeBron's career. But the first act, I think, because those LeBron teams were so good, and by the way, the East at that time was so mid. Honestly, they didn't have a team that could really stand up to those LeBron Cavs. I think this fan base kind of forgot how much of a struggle it can be to climb into that top tier. Like they have a really talented roster now that can't get out of the second round, which is really frustrating. But man, that's the reality. That's the reality for a lot of these teams. And by the way, that doesn't mean that it's okay. Like Donovan Mitchell still has an expectation that he needs to win a championship. Not like Eastern Conference Finals. Okay, cool. That'd be a nice step to take next year or the year after. But if they aren't close to winning a championship by the time that it's time to talk about the next contract, he's going to look somewhere else. So it's two things can be true again, right? Like the Cavs have built it to a point where like, wow, they've taken a huge step. But the next step, which is the most important step to Donovan, is really hard. Look at Philly. Joel Embiid is like a top 5 NBA player, top 3 NBA player when he's healthy, when he's really going. Last year, before he hurt his knee against, I think it was the Warriors in January, he was literally on pace to break Wilt Chamberlain's record for points per minute. He was scoring more points per game than he was playing minutes per game. He was breaking math. That dude's never been out of the second round either. He's never been out of the second round either. So, like, it's really hard. It's really hard. We need to acknowledge that as well. And I think there's kind of like, okay, to quote the corny J. Cole line, there's a beauty in the struggle. There's a beauty in the struggle. There's a beauty in working and having all this talent and, pushing all your chips in, pushing up against the salary cap, exhausting all of your draft assets, trying to maximize your win now window for a really talented roster and still not getting there. But that's like, if this team does find a way to climb the mountaintop, like this will be part of the elation. That will be part of the elation of winning a championship, right? Is the ugly Knicks loss and then the ugly-ish Celtics loss. Like, these are growing pains that are necessary but not always acceptable, and that's the tricky needle to thread, isn't it?
Yes it is, Jimmy. And I just came up with an idea that I wanted to throw out to our listeners, because I forget that you're such a big music guy because of all the sports that you cover and all the things that you do. But I love J. Cole. J. Cole's my favorite artist. And I'm thinking maybe we do a Music Monday and a Food Friday. So you hop on for the Monday pods, and Chris does a food pod with me on Fridays, so we can get into the intricacies of all those different things and still let people know that we're not robots. We can talk about more than just basketball and contracts and all the different aprons and stuff like that. Man, I think Chris will be down for that potentially. So
yeah, basically, I have two parts of my brain. One is basketball reference, football reference brain, where I could quote you really weird stat trends about all teams I'm covering. The other is just rap bar brain, where again, I'll just like right there, stream of consciousness. I'm thinking about, what are the Cavs doing? And it makes me think of Love Yours by J. Cole. So.
Gotta love it, man. You gotta love it. But, so, to our subtexters, let us know if that is something that you would be interested in so we can give you some more hip-hop, pop culture, whatever. And then also so Chris can do his little food stuff, especially while he's traveling around the world covering the team and giving you some top-tier places that he visits. Maybe we'll do a recap of every week of the places that he's been. I think that could be interesting. But with that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, Jimmy, and me by subscribing to Subtext. This is where you can let us know if you want us to do something that's more creative, not only basketball related, but this is also where you can send in your questions for anything Cavs related. So, to do so, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast. It's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.